All right, so we're calling to order this meeting today, Wednesday, Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. It is 6 p.m. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Harper, would you mind doing roll call?
Sure.
Chuck Vile,
Here.
David Gittens,
Here.
Tara Hansen,
Here.
Sam Morocco,
Here.
John Dolan,
Here.
Gus Zununa,
Here.
and Kim Harper.
All right, thank you. Next up is D. We'll need to approve the minutes from May 21st, 2025, the regular minutes. Is there any changes that need to be made, or should we make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to accept them as submitted.
I'll second
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. No presentations today. There's nobody from the public here, so no public comment. And review the agenda. Financial matters, that's going to kind of get brought up in I, which is the reports, resolutions, and recommendations. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was Carlisle Wortman to help to prepare the budget from the DDA. I know we have our own subcommittee for finance, but they have helped us with the other committees as far as budgeting, and they've offered to help to get us a formalized budget to present to the Board of Trustees so that we can get it approved. Any thoughts on this board as to
How much
whether
are they
we?
gonna charge to do that?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Sam?
My question would be is, since, we have to have a consulting firm basically somebody's got to drive the DDA and work with everybody and, know that someone who knows the timelines of things, how many years out it's going to be. I don't know that we could create a budget with the knowledge we have. Doesn't seem like that would, I mean, we got two, I look at it two different ways. We've got money that's coming in that we could spend without borrowing money, and trickle down spending, which then the budget's only going to be as high as whatever's coming in. If we're looking at projected budgets, like the stuff from the Capital Improvement Committee is, going to be working on the major improvements, I think you got to have the person who's going to be driving the project, contacting the road commission, MDOT, doing the engineering, doing the drawings. If we're going to be moving sidewalks, doing infrastructure, changing intersections, that kind of stuff, that's way above, I believe, this board's pay grade to come up with, to even know how long a term it is, kind of have a database of what those things cost that they've done with other towns and stuff like that. What my concern would be not knowing is if we don't get the budget right, we're going to be asking for budget amendments would be my concern, or we're not going to get what we want done in the year or the time frame we want to do it. So it just seems like it's a more complex thing, because there's so many variables, and we're looking down the road 10, 15 years of this money coming in. So I guess it would probably, maybe we could stumble through the budget now where we have no money and we're only talking about one or two items, but if we're looking at long-term, I don't care who does it, but I think that we should have somebody that's done it before, that's in their field to do it, since it's in the budget, Now, most DDAs have full-time, a lot of DDAs around here have full-time staff that just run the DDA, which we don't have. So we're not spending money on that type of, but we're gonna pay somebody to run, to control all of this and plan it and orchestrate it and make sure that it's done right, so. That'd be my only concern, is that I don't, you know, that we might not, we don't have access to all that data. Maybe the township does, but I don't know that any of us, you know, other than Chuck having access to what, like, the CIA's budget was. You know, how much do you spend if you're gonna do a road improvement? How much would you allocate? You know, how long does it take to generate the revenue? What's the skin in the game to participate with the road? You know, those maybe, you know, I don't know all that. That's not my field.
Right.
Those are the questions that, I think we should have a plan for, so that we're moving exponentially, or as fast as we can with some of the projects. But like right now, there's not much going on, but it's gonna, I think we gotta start planning long-term. Once the park's done, we wanna be active and already have stuff in the hopper, you know, but
And
it's just
regardless.
my thought, I don't know.
We have to present a budget to the board anyway, so whether we're gonna do it or we're gonna have consultants who have already done it for other committees and know what they're doing, because there's multiple different departments, you know, where the money's coming from, talking to the assessors department, and knowing where these funds are all coming from, the TIF funds. That's why, you know, I think the Carlisle Wortman group would be good, or another consulting firm, if somebody's got another idea. John, you had a question?
So I don't disagree with anything that Sam said, and, but my question, doesn't the township already have some type of arrangement with the Carlisle group? Wouldn't we have a general idea of what they charge based on previous projects?
Probably could look it up.
Okay,
They did this year's budget for us, for this year.
okay.
$110 an hour.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's supposed to be, it's very vague for a reason, the budget, because we don't have a definitive plan yet, you know what I mean? So I don't think it's gonna be a super detailed budget this year coming up, but it may get more complex. Brian, I don't know, have you seen the acceleration of the CIA, how that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a spreadsheet out there that basically, and it's in your DDA plan at the appendix, that shows the revenue generation, projected revenue generation, and that's essentially what the budget ends up being based on. So, and I think next year is gonna be even higher because there's been some changeover on the corridor anyway. So it's higher than what was projected.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly what the number is now.
Right, and those numbers are gonna fluctuate, right, as people, companies buy property, the tax revenue is gonna go up, so. Tara, you had
Did
something?
the CIA's budget get created by Carlisle, or was it someone else?
I think back then it was probably him and the budget director.
Do we have a budget director still that can help?
We
For
have
Independence
a
Township? Do we have-
budget assistant, yeah. We have, yeah, I mean, there's two parts, right? There's the revenue, and then there's the expense. The revenue side is relatively easy to project, right? Knowing that, as we talked about it, you know, some buildings are gonna be bought, sold, whatever. The expense side is gonna be all project driven. So I don't know what Carlisle is gonna do out of the gate until we tell them these are the projects we wanna have done. So, I mean, I don't really care if we use Carlisle or not, but again, it doesn't matter until the project committee comes back with their recommendations on what they wanna do. And then there's always gonna be the question then of, do we try to borrow the money for the future revenue to get it done quicker or whatnot? But again, everything's project driven.
When do we have to present the budget?
All budgets I want to have done by September 15th. So, yeah, I'm running the budget part of the township, yeah. So this would be part of it.
Figured
So
it
really,
out.
which means by August 15th, because I want to have them finalized by September 15th. So we got about a month and a half. But again, as Sam pointed out, depending on the projects, it's not really complicated this year for 26. It's not going to be very complicated. But again, it goes back to the projects. If you're going to, and I know that Sam and some of you guys are on that project thing, if you're going to front load projects, then we have to look at the projection of the cash flow to determine how much we're going to try to borrow, get the township to allow us to borrow, right?
But would that be in the budget? Not really.
Well, it's going to be a budget that you want to spend this much.
Right, because I think that the only thing I can see is that we've got projects that we're gonna allocate, they're gonna be in the budget. And then we're gonna wanna allocate money for engineering, you know, the things that we'll need to do, spend money on to get the costs, you know, narrowed down for the future project. So, you know, what we're doing, and then the money we need to do the research and dial in the future, you know, the cost of the future projects on future budgets. So as long as there's money left over for those types of, you know, if we're gonna move the sidewalks, do, you know, do this, do that, you know, what does that run? Somebody's gonna know, we're gonna wanna allocate 10 grand in engineering, so we could get to the point of getting actual cost estimations of projects. You know, there's gotta be some kind of money in the budget for that type of stuff.
The idea
I
of a
don't know what
budget.
that would be.
Yeah, the idea of a budget is to be able to say, in '25, we're only gonna spend this much in '26, right? So if you think that based on, let's say you had another park project type thing, we're gonna spend probably about 100,000 on that, we're gonna spend 10,000 on the engineering, da-da-da-da, all that should be in the budget.
Right.
Right? So that's why it still comes back to what projects you're gonna wanna do. Take a, you know, probably best guess, in all reality, and say, okay, that's what we're gonna do. And then we also have to take a look at the revenue. So obviously, if we don't have the tax revenue to offset it, then we have to have a plan for that, right? Just because there's a budget doesn't mean we get to spend it, we still have to have the revenue to offset the costs. So I'm presuming that this, for '26, the projection on the cash flow from the tax revenue is not gonna be very much compared to what the project teams are gonna wanna try to accomplish. So ultimately, we're gonna have to probably go back to the township to say, can you front load us on some of these projects?
Yeah, I would think in '26, we'd be if the most we'd be asking for is a small amount to finish the park project, you know what I mean? And then that's gonna get paid off in '27, you know, but I think with that, we can come up with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to come up with the budget of what it's gonna cost to do the White Lake Road improvement project or any of that in this year or next year's probably. But but budgeting money for the engineering, which will probably take a year or two to get
Right.
all of that figured out, is what, you know, we'd wanna have in the budget, you know, but that's pretty far down the road.
Yeah, so I think you guys, what the project team just needs to come up with, what do we wanna accomplish in '26?
Right.
And then I would say, let's take a look at that. My suggestion would be, let's take a look at that. And do we need to spend the money on Carlisle or X Consulting? Or is it, hey, we know we're just gonna need 50 grand to go through these engineering studies, da-da-da-da. Well, then that's a pretty simple one. We don't really need to pay anyone to do that. I don't think so, but, you know, if it's gonna get more involved and you're gonna try to get more done, then yeah, it probably would make sense to get a Carlisle type group.
If it's only a few hours worth of work for them, then it's, you know, reasonable. If it's
Yeah.
in the thousands, then that's a different story. If
But
it's-
that's-
I mean, it's very vague right now, there's very little money to spend, it's not going, you know, I can't see it being too
DDA
complex.
budget's pretty simple. I mean, it's basically, he had a line item basically for just general consulting, and then it's projects.
Yep.
So it's very simple. And then also the Corbin, you know, we're still, I think, have to pay it off another year or two.
Yes, we got
Yeah.
another
So
60,000.
You gotta chop that off right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So-
Who's got the projected, that's in our, somewhere in a file, the
The
project,
appendix?
the new appendix of the projected revenue for each year? That's probably
Yeah.
not super accurate, but it's low, if anything, it's not gonna be high.
They're pretty good. This seems pretty good at projecting
I'm
that
saying
out.
depending on what happens with the car you know, as the tax, you
Yeah.
know, if
Yeah,
anything,
so
it's gonna go,
bottom
if
line,
anything, it's
that's
gonna
what
go up if property sell or something.
Right.
We're not gonna go backwards.
Unless we have a 2009.
Well, to your point, if the budget is going to be relatively easy to put together, I don't see why it would hurt to have the Carlisle Group help us out with it. You know, if it gets into the thousands, that means it's a very elaborate budget, right? Which is something that we're not gonna do, right? We all work
Right.
full-time jobs. So it might be a good idea to bring them on to help out with the budget. Because here's the thing, if we try to do it in the next 30 days, we come back to this meeting, and then we realize that we're not able to put one together, then we've got, you know, a month to get you a budget. essentially.
I think it only helps, whoever's going to help us with this project and we're going to need help needs to, it benefits us, them to have a knowledge of what do we want, what is our, so they're working with us, not, the more knowledge they have, the better. So, like you said,
I agree.
that you wanna know that they know that there's only this much for this, so don't don't do stuff that's gonna get us out of that without knowing that we gotta get an amendment if we wanted to or something, so, I don't know. But with the deadline that was just put on us August 15th, we gotta have a plan. It's not complicated, but it's gotta get off the list,
Yeah, it's 2 months, by the way, not 1 month.
I know, they go
By
fast.
the next meeting will be July 15th, and then from there, we'll have 1 month
Yeah,
to get
so
you the
between now and
budget.
then, we need to have what you guys want to have done.
We need a project
Okay.
list and a
Yeah.
rough budget,
Yeah.
and then by then we could figure out if we can do it ourselves or if we need Carlisle. Cause I tend to think that if we're just plugging a few things in, we probably don't need Carlisle on the first budget.
And some of these capital improvement projects that we're talking about, other than throwing some money at engineering, we don't, we don't need to get into the weeds of all of that future spending down the road,
No.
But part of it with this is, we'll have to, and I think maybe at that meeting we decide, do we wanna, we're doing the flags, we're doing the park, would the next thing be street trees? I would say no, because we wanna move sidewalks and, do green space, but we can break some of that streetscape beautification up into smaller pieces too, so that we can, as money's generated each year, we can be doing smaller infrastructure projects, even if it's like removing pavers next to the curb and putting in green space, or we're adding street trees, something that's not
Yeah.
millions, but it's kind of eating up a little money as we're accumulating money, but we're still showing that we're getting something done. I think it's important that every year we have a goal to, even though some projects we'd have to have 10 years worth of revenue to do, or 5 years worth of revenue to do, that there should be some, I think, we'll work on that as a capital improvement committee to come up with little or smaller visual things that are gonna happen annually to show a value
Okay.
for the tax capture,
Yeah, I agree. I do believe that we're gonna need some consulting for many of these projects. Right?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot, engineering and regular, there's a lot. Someone's gotta deal with all the other entities to get things done.
Is it common for the other committees to do their own budgets, or they usually outsource that? Before we move on, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but at the same time, before we move on.
Really, there isn't
this-
any other committee besides the CIA that has a budget.
Okay, fair enough. And did the CIA use
Well,
somebody to help?
Well, I know that Carlisle was involved. I don't know to the extent that they were involved. And I don't know what they charged, but I can find that out.
Their last project was the traffic light, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was years in the making, so I don't know how much their budget changed. They're at the tail end, not in the beginning,
We had to borrow from the township board
Yeah.
because the cost went up.
Right.
Significantly, yeah.
Kim-
Well, to Sam's point, what we're going to accomplish as far as spending money in the coming year will be probably, we have the park, we have our banners, and we have very small start of whatever the next project's going to be. So even if we did our own this first year, Carlisle or whoever consultant to do the budgets would have to get deeply involved in the following year.
Right.
Yeah, most
It's gonna be much
So,
more
right.
complex.
If they're $110 an hour cost for it, I don't think it's that much to keep them from the beginning through our project, to keep them all up to date with where we're thinking and how our flow of projects we think should be going. They may not go to that schedule, but these small projects have taken us quite a bit longer than I think we all thought.
Yeah.
And I think when you start talking infrastructure and curving and all of that, and then you're dealing with Oakland County or MDOT at the same time, it's gonna take an awful lot of time. So in '26, really, my vision is a lot of groundwork done, but not a lot of money spent yet.
fair.
Yeah. So you're advising that we would just do our own budget this year and use them in the future? Okay. Should we?
You know, I
take
put a little
vote
twist on
that,
it.
or let's hear the twist.
I would say let's do our own budget and at $110 an hour, have them review it. That way they know where we're coming from, what we're trying to do, if
That's a
there's
good idea.
anything we miss, they can
I like
point it
that.
out. But, I mean, the budget should be so simple, it should cost $110.
We're putting all the work into figuring it out,
Yeah.
and then just have them format it or
Yeah.
agree, or maybe
Yeah.
they might have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But I like Kim's point, that whoever will, it's gonna take, someone's gotta drive the train, and that's who, that person should be intimate with all of what we're thinking, what we're doing, everything, so. The more involvement, the better, I think, so you have less stumbles.
Okay. And who should be in charge of drawing up the budget?
Well, I think we already had a committee that was gonna do that.
We did
we
have a
finance
committee.
committee,
Yeah, which is,
but we have a treasurer who's not in that committee, so it's kind of. So it would be the finance committee.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, yeah.
That's yourself and Tara and Chuck.
Yeah,
Okay.
So the capital improvement committee, which is the rest of us, we will meet and have that. I've been making a list of things that we've been talking about. We just gotta sit down and go through it, We'll be ready for September 15th, right?
August 15th.
No,
Yeah.
we,
August.
yeah.
I mean, August 15th. Well, actually.
But really, we need
next
the
meeting. It'll be the
project
next
by the
meeting.
next meeting with
July.
a rough budget
thinking
to
July.
be able to put it in with,
Yeah, look,
Yes.
I think it's gonna be all of like 10 line
I
items.
think so too.
So, I mean, the spreadsheet's gonna be real simple, so, just give us the numbers and we can plug them in.
Okay.
Okay. Do we need to make a formal motion for that, or yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for the finance committee to bring to the next meeting a formalized budget, and that we will hire the Carlo Wortman Group to review that budget for $110
No.
an hour.
Comment.
Yes.
If we're coming back at July's meeting with capital improvements and everything that we want to do, don't they need to put that together between the July meeting and the August meeting? Or what are they basing this on if they're going to do theirs at the same time we're making our list?
Yeah, we can't do that. It's a linear process for sure. You gotta get the
So
project
I think
first. then
Yeah,
the
I would
budget.
ask for you to amend it from July 15th for them to have their budget done between July 15th and August 15th, and us to have the capital improvement stuff presented to you on the July meeting, to
Yes.
the board.
Okay, I will amend that motion to have the capital improvement committee have their projects to us by the next meeting in the middle of July, and to have the finance committee prepare their budget and be reviewed by the Carlisle Wortman Group for $110 per hour by August, the middle of August, August 15th.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, awesome. So we're done with that. Next item of business, so the banners, I was hoping to come back to you guys and say they're already ordered, they're going up next week, but it turns out MDOT has some stipulations that they have created over the years, and they haven't really changed them. I think going back to the 90s is when they last changed them. So when it comes to banners, at first they just told me that all I needed was permits. It can't have any advertisement, and it has to be approved by them. So I gave a follow-up email, and then they gave me like additional things that they said. And one of the things that I thought was kind of bizarre was that you can only have a banner up for 3 weeks and 6 weeks if it's during Christmas. So I emailed back, they just emailed me today, but I emailed back, saying that we have a meeting tonight, and, could they clarify that? Is that a banner that goes across the road? Because I could understand that.
Right.
But I told them from the beginning that this was for light poles. So You know, and then another thing that's kind of a hurdle is that I'm trying to get with the DPW to help with the permitting. There's no current permitting for Independence Township for banners, so it needs to be created, which isn't a big deal, but Dave McKee's on vacation. So all kinds of fun hurdles for the project I thought would be the easiest one. So that's kind of where we are. Another thing that we need to do and vote on from a budget standpoint is the brackets. We agreed that we'd purchase the banners. The company that does the banners sells brackets for $150 a piece. Dave McKee and DPW was able to find another place that sells them for $105 a piece. So that obviously makes a lot more sense. So that's something that we would need to get approved to purchase, because we can't just duct tape the banners to the poles. So there's all kinds of other requirements. The banners can't be 18 feet up. They have to be a minimum distance of 18 feet in the air. They can't block traffic or signs, which makes sense. But there's quite a few stipulations that they put into place that, I drive around all these other townships and cities, and they're just up, and I don't think you have to deal with that.
I can make a suggestion.
What's your
That we
suggestion?
don't call them banners. Technically, the description of a banner is a long piece of cloth stretched out with a sign on it. So if this is a flag,
Flag, okay.
so like, for instance, when you say a banner's gotta be 18 feet in the air, well, that's because 14 foot, or 13'6" is the standard height of a tractor trailer, and then there's room for air and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Where if it's a flag, there's gonna, I gotta almost think positively that a flag and a banner is two different things. Like Clarkson puts banners across Main Street,
Right,
makes a good point.
yeah,
But flags on flagpoles is a flag.
sure.
So we might be getting caught up in using
The
the wrong
verbiage.
word,
Okay,
because we're really not putting up a banner, we're putting up a flag. What's on a flag is irrelevant, but the way it's mounted, the way it's hung, so I think that that might get us out of a lot. We might
Okay.
still need a permit, but it might get us out of a lot of the other silly things, because I gotta believe in America, there's limited rules about flags. You know what I'm saying? Because that would get them in trouble, limiting, because they can't talk about content, you know what I mean? So that'd be my,
okay.
look at it from a different view maybe, and
No,
we
that's
could
a fair
maybe get
point.
it go faster,
Did anybody talk to the village of Clarkston?
Well, we had a former member of the Chamber of Commerce, who was Kendall, and right before she left, she was actually the one who brought up this sign company that we've been talking to. But she's since left, and I don't know the point of contact for the village of Clarkston.
Jonathan?
Yeah, Jonathan's.
What is
Yeah.
the question for him, because I can swing over tomorrow?
Well, I would just ask him, what did he have to do in order to get the flags hung up on M15? I mean, Main Street is still MDOT.
Yeah. Would they apply for it under a banner
Yeah.
or a flag? Which is,
We're gonna ask him for
For
a copy
3
of the
weeks.
application.
Yeah,
3 weeks is kind of like, for what it costs to have the banner.
I think I think the banner flag thing is what's driving those stipulations,
maybe. I mean, my initial email was very clear on what we wanted. I may have called it a banner, but it was going to be.
Right.
I mean, it said,
A flag.
I told the size, it's 3 by 2 feet. It's obviously not gonna be draping over the road. But either way, I'll change my verbiage. What's Jonathan's last name?
Smith.
Smith.
Smith?
I can swing in and talk to him tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, so if we could just get an idea of what they did, or how, we might even just be able to copy and paste what they have
Oh,
the approval. Okay, very good. As far as the brackets, we're gonna need at least 50 of them, possibly, more, just in case some of them fail or break or something. So we need to make a motion to approve the purchase of brackets for the flags, not the banners.
And the brackets?
No, so I'm just changing the brackets for the flags. I'm not
Okay.
calling them banners anymore.
Okay, but you want a motion to approve the purchase of the brackets? Do we have
Brackets.
an exact dollar amount that we're asking for?
105, he said, for what's Dave
105.
McKee's.
But I mean, with
So that'll be
tax and blah,
They
blah,
don't-
blah,
they don't tax
shipping.
the-
111th,
They don't tax the township.
60.
Okay, so anything, I'll do like to not exceed number or something, you know, it's a little
Yeah.
higher than what,
Not to exceed 110 or something.
No,
one,
Well, with
One-
the tax, it'll be,
125, there won't be tax.
yeah. If you do
Make it
125,
125.
that's gonna cover the tax.
well, he
No,
said
there's
we're
no
tax
tax.
exempt, but that doesn't mean
But
there's
there could be
shipping.
shipping.
Could be shipping, yeah.
So what do I mean, an overall dollar amount, not a per unit dollar amount,
Like 125 should cover it.
50. I mean, we're looking at $6,000, $6,200. That good?
For the flags.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the purchase of the flag, light pole flag brackets upon contingent on them being allowed to be installed by the county, not to exceed a budget not to exceed $6,200.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Awesome, thank you. So, next line item is subcommittee updates. Sam, do you want to talk about the park design from,
Is that-
or John, do you want to talk about the park design from?
John really spearheaded the meeting, so I'd rather John
Did he?
talk about it, I felt.
Well, we have a list of things that we like changed.
Okay,
The first, just a couple things, we wanted to make sure that the plants that were chosen towards the front of the property were low enough that we could see over them. That's the one thing the business next door asked was, don't block our visibility. We also don't want our sign visibility blocked. The design that we looked at has a sidewalk going from the park to the business. We would like to eliminate that. We're okay with a break in the landscaping there so that we know people are gonna walk through. We just don't want to, there's a number of reasons. We're not gonna ask the business to give up a parking spot. We also don't wanna have to make it ADA compliant. We don't want to encourage the use of it, but we know that they're going to. We want a better horticultural barrier around the property that divides it between the two lots. And then we'd like to go with no grass or as little grass as possible. We'd like to not have to mow and just reduce as much maintenance as possible. We have a suggestion on making the road or the pathway in wider so that a vehicle could get in there if they needed to, and potentially, I believe, less of a curve, just make it a little more smooth from the front to the back. How am I doing on my memory there, Sam?
You're doing good, buddy. I'm checking them off as you go. You want to see the rest of the notes?
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, yeah, and then we'd like to propose a roofed shelter. And I think the aesthetics of this could be debated, but we were thinking something very simple, like an acrylic plastic, something that would stand up and be low maintenance. And then having a bike repair station here towards the front. And, these are pretty relatively inexpensive options. There's a note of irrigation.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the irrigation, Sam?
Well, whether if we're gonna put in a well, or we're gonna, we need to get, that's something that when we get done with the landscape design, then the engineers are, we're gonna have to work on how are we gonna, if we're gonna irrigate it, and if we're gonna go with, try to tap the water, if we're gonna put in another well out by the back, or what we're gonna do, but that's something that is gonna be part of our discussion to dial in the plan with that one,
And then, just in terms of park benches or equipment that's there, what we're thinking is just something flat. You know, think of like, I know we've all seen these, we don't want to back to the bench, just a flat bench that runs along the side.
So you could face both ways, is that the idea?
Yep. And then, I think I got it.
Read all my notes.
Some of them were just
Yeah.
actual notes.
Simple. Trash receptacle, I think he had thought he might have had one by the front bench. Yeah, pros and cons to that, you know, because somebody's got to maintain it, obviously, if it's out there in the public.
Yeah, so I think on the trash receptacle, one of the things that's gonna be important there is making sure that it's as animal-proof as possible, so it doesn't become a mess. So I don't think just a trash can people can throw trash into is ideal.
We were talking maybe like the ones they have at the parks where they're like bear-proof or something, where you know, you gotta unlock it to empty it, so it's more, just a push-in lever, you know, to put stuff in there. It'd be a deterrent from putting large things in the top of it or something like that, but, so we got 2 more meetings that we are included in the design thing that we want to get your guys' input on these things, and then we're gonna meet again with Chris, who did this drawing, and have him tweak it again. And then we actually, if we need it, we get 1 more meeting with him, and then there would be the presentation of it, or the finalizing of it to make the presentation to our board, you know, so it's, you know, so we're gonna have to start narrowing in, and some of this, so that we can give the information to the engineer and Dick, or whoever, you know, Chris, is, you know, do we want pavers, do we want, you know, 6-inch thick reinforced concrete, so it's gonna be there forever, do we wanna do exposed aggregate, you know, the benches, I think that we'd like to bring back some more samples of actually some benches. I know there's companies like Uline and other ones that make industrial, real heavy-duty stuff, and if we're buying radius-type benches and things, then we're gonna wanna have that mirror the radiuses of the walks, you know, so that it all lays out right. I like the idea of the trellis in the back with the stuff growing on it, but I could see that be something that could fail later, so I don't know that in a private setting or a personally business setting, but I think it's a little pushing the envelope on making it indestructible to the public, you know? And he's got the drain in the middle where it currently is. I like the idea better of, because it's just gonna be rocks and gravel and a drain, and everything's gonna drain toward it. I mean, originally in our plan, we wanted to kind of use this rain garden and drainage system along the south side, so that it was a low-lying thing, but it was a definitive boundary, you know, type architectural feature. Moving the storm sewer a little bit when we're doing the site work, you know, is not, I don't think it's that big of a deal that we should design around just the one drain on the property, that we could, he has it kind of as a focal point, but I don't know if the storm sewer drain is what we want to, you know, if we want it incorporated right in our face of it, or that it's like hidden in native grasses and everything and rocks, and it drains it, you know, off to the side of what we're doing. So that's the kind of stuff that we need some input from the rest of you on what your feelings are on it. Just so we keep the meetings, keep making significant improvements every time we change the drawing, you know?
Ms. Harper?
So,
But I'll take notes.
a very quick review on this, where you're suggesting to put that drainage. You have an existing walnut tree that's quite large, I understand, and I'm not sure that that could handle that excess water that would be directed into that position, so we would want to check that before we decide
Yeah,
on
I was
that.
thinking the other way.
more
By
toward
the
the front
restaurant?
of the property?
No, that if, you know, that here's the drain currently, that if the drain was down here closer to the back of the sign, we would be draining
More
the
toward the
property
front
towards the
versus-
front, away from that tree, because we're the low lot of all the sides, so everything's bowling on our property. It's just a matter of, do we want the whole site sloping to the center or elevating itself kind of up, you know?
So also, as, you don't want to have grass in here, but there is an awful lot of area that is deemed grass right now. While I agree something like a catch basin would take up a large majority of your, I think you're still gonna, what are you gonna replace all these little small areas with to make it not grass? I just see that that's an awful lot of stone and, or whatever you're gonna come up with to replace that. Because there are gonna be little areas, I don't know what else you would put in there. besides
It's
grass.
mostly all beds around the whole entire thing of hardscape or gravel.
All
You can
this-
do grass, except for that now we're counting on the Safety Path Committee and the Parks Department to maintain it on a weekly basis.
I understand, however, with this design, I think you're gonna run into some of it, and even if you have a little, or you have a little bit more, you're still gonna have that issue. So I kind of relook at that as far as
Okay,
pulling that through.
got it.
Are these spruce trees in the front coming out then, since they say that they're 20 to 40 feet? Are they the ones that are getting removed?
Yeah, well, I think that we had a consensus that we wanted the site to get taller and more secluded as
Rather
it
than
went
have-
back, but kind of using the midpoint. This stuff would be low, not to obstruct the building, which is elevated. You gotta go up all the stairs to get in the building, so it's not like it's sitting on the ground, you know what I mean? But then from the midpoint, we could put big tall pines that would start hiding the residential and building a wall, but keep it from be conscious of the height from the midpoint forward to the road, that stuff
Well,
stays
these ones up at
relatively
the front
low.
are 20 to 40 feet. right?
Yeah, those would not be
These are
there.
listed as 20 to 40 feet when you look at what they are and you flip the page.
Oh, well, no, this is like little low-lying boxwoods or shrubs or something. I'm not saying that's what he presented, I get you, but
Okay.
I don't think I agree. We don't want anything that with elevation, certainly not in front of our sign.
No.
And instead of the trellis, perhaps, like you said, a few taller spruces or something around the seating area would then enclose that also,
Yeah.
and be a natural, non-maintenance item
Right.
versus your trellis.
I almost think we should have like more of a, almost wall of trees at the back, very back side.
Yeah.
That would create a lot of shade,
Yeah.
and then we wouldn't have the need for the trellis.
All right, well, that's what we kind of originally was our intent, was to have it kind of escalate in the back. But this is his
I think
first
that-
draft of what we threw to him, you know, so.
I think the trellis is going to be very hard to maintain and keep it looking pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if the point of this is to be welcome to our township, then it's not the way to do it.
Also, in the picture that they have like the Independence Township, this sign, not that we would use that sign, but the way it faces is not what we would want. I would think we would want to turn it or move it so it's not obstructing the neighbor, but it is visible and obvious to the drivers coming in at a high rate of speed.
Yeah, and at an angle, when you were driving, you would see it straight on. Not-
It's flat, you
Right.
don't do
Or
that.
you can have it like radius, you know, if you see the thin line in red, if you can have it.
Well,
On the curb
when we
versus
met
on
out
the
there with
curb.
the sign company, you know, I know the sportsman doesn't want to get blocked, but we're the sign location's pretty far away from his building, and you actually are kind of heading downhill, so, you know, I don't think we were gonna, the sign was
The
gonna be.
sign wasn't gonna
Wasn't
obstruct.
gonna be too obstructive. We can, because the sign can only be at 6 feet tall.
6 feet tall, yeah.
So that's just somebody standing there. Their buildings, the first floor of their building's 5 feet off the ground. So,
But their sign's not, is it? Their sign's not?
no,
like
but
off the
there's
ground.
quite a, no, but there's Yeah, I don't think our sign would be any more
Yeah, it's
obstructive
probably
than
100
any other business sign would be, out there, just
Yeah.
prettier.
Well, there's a curve of the road there too, so as you're coming in, you're actually looking straight at their sign and the road curves. So it's not huge, but it's slight.
Well, we're conscious of it. We need to make sure that, maybe the high pendant part or whatever, we do the architectural feature, the way we have it, is it on the, I think it's on the left, maybe we put it on the right.
Okay.
Might be, I don't know who's on the sign committee, but.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's like this whole area here where you could concentrate that sign. I mean, the sign right now is here, but it's flat. And if you brought it out to this area here, it would give you that notification, but yet,
My worry about that roof shelter you mentioned, even if it's, transparent, I think that's still gonna obstruct the view of the sports. And that could always be something that we could add later, or if we just, if they wanna put in a bus, then, we can add that to the park later.
Well, then maybe we can move it back into the park somewhere if it's actually going to be a temporary covered bench with a roof over it as a shelter. I mean, I get it, the Sportsman's Bar, but we don't put this much effort into protecting any business next to anybody's sign ever in the township. So we're doing a service to him, but I don't want it to affect our park because he's worried about his,
if we,
his sign. I'm
If
not
we
saying don't do it,
put-
but we could push it back, Dave, if you think that's.
if we
I was-
pushed it back here, it would also take up some of that area that's gonna be hard to negotiate with either plants or trees. And you made one similar to like the MDOT ones where they have the curved, and
Yeah.
those are maintenance-free, basically.
Yeah,
They're
there's some really
small,
cool Art Deco
yet,
looking, fancy ones
they
that are
would
modern.
supply that cover.
But I think I think that where you're at on Dixie and there's nothing around there, that
Here.
it wouldn't be, we
Backbench.
have room to provide shelter, whether it, I agree, if it doesn't have to be by the road looking like a bus stop, but
Right.
it could be, if we're in agreement, so that, unless you guys want to kibosh the whole roof, roofed bench thing, this is what we gotta tell them.
I think if it looked tasteful and it was in a different location, because I feel like if it's up here where we were discussing, it's gonna look like a bus stop.
I agree.
Yep.
Right, and that was driven by us trying to get the money to put this in by making it a future bus stop is, why we had it where we had it,
Yeah, I think Tara's point about the trellis, I think it applies to this too, because in 10 years, the sun beating on that, whatever we put there, it's not gonna be the most attractive entryway to our community. So I'm not for it or against it, I just think we should consider that.
So moving it back would be better.
No, getting rid of it.
The trellis should be gone.
The
in my
trellis is a
opinion.
whole
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
maintenance issue
And then,
than a covered shelter,
But you have a nice curve in this design, you could put the shelters here, not far off of the front, not far off of the sides, and still,
Just gonna
and
pull up a picture of one.
and use some of that area.
Keep in mind though, Kim, all this is gonna change a little bit.
Be
We're gonna
wider.
widen the path and we're gonna make it less jagged so that you could bring a car up there.
Yeah.
I think if
I
you were to
think
put a
so.
shelter anywhere, it should go in the back where the trellis is, and make it so that people walk all the way through. You're putting all this money and you want them to enjoy it and
Okay.
to spend time there and, if you're gonna put a bench, the idea, if I were there with my children, I'm never gonna sit that close to Dixie Highway.
Yeah.
Okay, so what,
if-
what about like a little,
If you were
Yeah.
to now, if
Yeah,
you're gonna
lean-to
go
or
to
something.
Sportsman and you're like, oh, look how pretty it is, and you walk over, well, you got a chance if you're gonna sit back there, but if you're up by Dixie Highway, first off, you can't have conversation, it's too loud. And second of all, the traffic goes so fast, if you have kids, you're never gonna stay there. So if you're a little further back and it feels nature-ish, and then maybe that's where the water is back there, so you have a little noise canceling idea, with the drain, it's just a drain, but it does make noise. And
good?
then it gives you something to put in that spot that you're gonna remove something. I also think that the drain where it is now, I don't think most people will even care that it's there. I think that people are used to in parking lots, you have drains, water is what it is, and you work around it. Now, I'd be a little more concerned with the weight of the truck by a drain, like how close do you want it to be when you're driving a truck there? And that would be a question for like the DPW on what type of ground you should put on that driveway.
Right now, it was a parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, it was this was in the middle of the asphalt, but it's gonna be all disturbed, for sure.
What I liked about your original drawing, Sam, was that it was kind of like you drive into a path and then it kind of opens up to seating, and then you drive, and then you can go down, narrower path opens up in the back to a bigger bubble. The original, not this.
Yeah, my
The one
super
that-
detailed drawing.
Super detailed
Napkin
crayon,
that I
crayon
did.
drawing.
Yeah, perfect.
So, but if that was in the middle bubble, you know, if
The
the
drain.
drain was there,
So just
then,
add another, you're saying to have it on both sides, so this walkway, this, you'd have one that comes here and connects over here and then meets in the back?
Oh, let me show you what I had sketched up, because I don't think you were at that first meeting.
Essentially, yes.
Huh?
I was giving it a simple answer.
Yeah,
No, I was not, I'm new.
this was kind of, so
it was like a
it
circle.
came down to, like, these were radius, like, separate seating areas instead of just all walkway to a single seating area. It was like small gathering space, you know, gathering circles. So the trail went through the middle, but then it bowed out on side, you know, on sides, and then this was like a proposed, and maybe has a little, standing seam metal shelter over it that's 10 foot by 10 foot, and underneath it is a picnic table. You know, that's, like the kind you have Dairy Queen, you know, like the U-line ones that are heavy, you know, more commercial grade, like something like that. Those just concepts, but what he's referring to is this having, this is all just walking, and the only place that's really kind of a gathering area is way in the back instead of multiple.
So if we had a more gathering area in the middle, we could just put the drain in the middle, which already is there, without having to move it. Which, it needs to be clean, because I drove past it today and there, it was just a puddle. So it's not draining very well.
And we'd have to know what that's gonna look like in the middle of our
Sure.
space. We don't, so the engineers haven't done the site work on this, he's just the architect. We don't know, until we get them involved, we may want the drain off to the side so we can run water under it. We may not wanna run water over the sidewalk to it everywhere. You know, cause if it's in a low-lying area, we could gather water and run it under the sidewalk to the, you know, that's all stuff
Yeah.
that we gotta figure out, stormwater management with the engineer when we, but it could affect our design, so we wanna be as dialed in as we can,
Right.
and then tell him to figure out how to make it work.
So is there any other ideas? Because what we want to do is we want to go back to Chris
Get it
this week
redrawn.
or early next week,
Yeah.
and then say, hey, we need to tweak these items so that you can give us a new design, and then that one might have to be tweaked too. So is there anything else that you're seeing that you don't like or needs to be removed?
I do like the planting beds that they have here, but they just have one, so perhaps they could expand on those in order to take up some of the dead space.
Okay, more beds.
I think the trash can should be moved back to where like the seating area is, rather than be up front by Dixie Highway.
I agree.
Yeah, because then it's faster, it's going to get full a lot faster by Dixie, that's
I
for sure.
tend to agree.
And if it is full, you won't see it driving by.
Right.
It just need to be monitored. I mean, I drive by there almost every day, so. If it's something all right, so I got trash moved to the back. If there's a shelter, it's gonna be pushed off of the road. No trellis, shrub height. What do you guys think about making a seating area under a small standing seam colored metal roof or earth tone metal roof, or not have, or, you know, in lieu of the shelter would be putting a picnic, you know, a commercial grade picnic table under a small metal roof. Gazebo, let's call it, but not a gazebo, I don't know what you call it, you know what I'm talking about, people have them in their backyards, just smaller
pergola?
I
versions.
Like a
kinda like
pergola?
it.
Yeah, well,
I prefer the look of a bench versus a picnic table.
Me too.
So I'm not for the picnic table, whether you want to have the pergola and then put a couple benches on each side of it or whatever, but I just prefer bench look because that's the idea of the park, not so much the
okay,
sun.
well, if it's gonna be a bench, I think we should go with a lineal roof over the bench. You know, unless you're talking about just putting a square roof up and putting two benches that face each other underneath it.
What
You
if we
go
did some
horseshoe bench.
memorial benches so someone else could buy them?
Well, that was always part of the
Yeah.
kind of getting.
But then
know.
you need a back to put a name on it. And you said no backs on them.
Who did?
You did.
No, I didn't mention it.
Well, we could put it back on the one in the very, at the back, because if there's a line of trees, having a back bench, you're not gonna stare into the trees, right? So having a bench with a back, in the back of the park
I'm
would
gonna
work.
we're gonna bring bench and shelter examples,
Okay,
that could be manipulated to radiuses and things, and then we can pick from, get everybody's consensus, if they're just gonna be black thin metal strips with rolled things, or they're gonna be, rubber coated mesh with backs on, whatever. If you want, I'll put together a little variety pack. But the placement of them we can work with, the architecture can come at the next meeting,
okay. Did you add that we need more trees in the back to kind of block it from the parking lot behind it?
Yeah, I think if you're not gonna have a walkway to the parking lot here, something needs to be added there. Otherwise, you might as well have a parking lot to Sportsman in the back of this property.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be, that's under the tree and shrub elevations. I'll just put high and thick to the rear, which is what we had actually told him. We had actual pictures of that kind of stuff too. This didn't come out exactly what we talked about, but it's a good start.
Yeah.
Did you add more planting clusters?
And yes, and we had that before, and that goes into less grass.
Correct.
So it kind of feeds in. When we originally talked about it, was gonna be, there was a lot more plantings, a lot more gravel, a lot more, the native grasses and low grasses in the front to, we gotta dial in some of that.
Mhm.
Does it make it harder for DPW or whoever to cut the grass the more beds we add and they just have smaller sections of grass though, than give them bigger sections of grass with less plantings? If you're gonna pay them anyway, is it harder for them to cut
I don't
the
think
more
it
beds you
matters.
have?
They probably just weed whack it anyway. They're not gonna come down here with big mowers to do little things, which would be my worry. Grass can look, can be good or can be bad,
Yellow.
I think that was my
Irrigation.
point, is that no matter how many planting beds or how many
Right.
things you have, you're still going to have grass, and you're still going to have that
Right.
maintenance.
Right.
At some level, so.
Well, I agree, but originally we had a whole rain garden taking this up, which would be no mow, it would be native grasses and rocks, and it ate this whole thing up, like the dry Stone Creek bed, kind of that we were creating to the drain, which, but I agree, there can be
It's
little
gonna be serviced anyway.
pockets that can be cut very easily, so they don't need to send the whole crew down there, but see
It
what he
will
comes,
just be a
see what he
maintenance
comes up
issue
with.
as years go.
This is a big separation from what you guys originally said you wanted, which was a dry, no water. I mean, this thing's
Yeah.
gonna take a ton of water. You got to have a sprinkler system for this.
That's what I think too.
I
And
mean,
it
there's
looks
no way
like
you
a
can get
lot
away
of
with it.
weeding to me.
I'm looking at all
What?
these plants, the trees, I mean, you're gonna need a sprinkler system if you're gonna go to anything close to this.
Well, we were going a lot less maintenance in the original
Yeah.
original design. Our flowers, which he did denote, were in removable containers in case we couldn't get people to maintain them, or we couldn't get a community group to take them over. We didn't want to have a bunch of flower beds. I'm talking the,
Yeah, I know.
with
But you got 8 beds
perennials,
here that are gonna
perennials.
have to be weeded. Right, aren't these all beds?
No, those are trees.
those are the canopies of the trees he's depicting.
These are beds?
This
Just this
brown
one.
is a bed
And
here,
then these
with
are
the bushes and that.
Okay.
But this
Which
was,
still need to be
this
trimmed.
was all
Yeah.
gonna be stone.
Yeah, it was
all
gonna
in.
be-
I don't know what he's got there. He's got
Maintenance
like,
issue here,
remember, John, it was.
We're gonna need irrigation for
Yeah.
sure. And I said that
though.
all
They gotta
along,
have the
even with,
maintenance, yeah.
Like, this was what we were,
we're
something
gonna have
like
water,
this was
we're
what
gonna
we
have
had
to, we're gonna have to
proposed
have
Go
irrigation.
through here
Yeah.
with native grasses, of course, but some kind of decorative dry
And
bed
it's
to
not
go to the
just
storm sewer.
These next few
you know.
years, I mean, this, if we're
And
gonna have
then-
this, years on
Mhm.
that, we're not proud,
We had,
so we do wanna make it.
it was really set up to be all rocks and just bushes and flowering trees, not a lot of flowers. The flowers were gonna, more like this, the flowers were gonna be hand planted in containers, and the rest was gonna be more this style,
Did you give him all that stuff? Did you give him that?
yes?
Okay.
But you know what I'm talking about, when it was more this style.
Like the planting beds and all green, natural.
Now, maybe we
green.
got a little bit of grass that runs along the sidewalk, but this is what I was envisioning going against the Sportsman's from the halfway point back, is that we were, you know, maybe not elevated high like that, but a mixture of, you know, boulders, stone, bushes, and flowering, not flower beds, you know, but yeah, that, and ground cover, because once you get a lot of ground cover, and if you know, it can be a way of minimizing the weeding and the maintenance
that goes
too.
into
And then we gotta get some nonprofit to take it over, so they maintain it for us. You got one, don't you?
Any other ideas for what we need to bring back to Chris to add or remove?
Shrub heights, no trellis, shelter to the rear, trash to the back, more beds.
Irrigation?
I mean, yeah, I think
Irrigation,
irrigation
it's
is like
on
the
here.
main one, because you can't have a conversation about what you're gonna plant until you know what type of irrigation you're putting in, or are you not putting in irrigation, because that dictates what you're going to plant.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between what we first talked about, which was having a well with a pump that would create water to a hose, or having underground sprinkler systems is a totally different. Having water on the site to be used to get it started, you know, and going, and people to use when they put in perennials, or having full-blown irrigation that we have to manage. Do we have that on any of our properties, irrigation, on anything that we own in the township? Chuck, can you think of? Besides this building, maybe?
None of the parks?
Huh?
Glenwood, I
Yeah,
think,
I was
has
gonna say.
irrigation.
Clintonwood, what in Clintonwood
I
does?
think the baseball fields do and the soccer fields.
Oh, for the,
I thought the baseball fields.
I meant like, does a senior center, like around it, or,
Ends up being-
I get baseball fields, but theirs are commercial, like, golf courses, where you probably put the big thing in the, you know, it's not little pop-ups, I wouldn't imagine, all over the baseball diamond. Anyway, I guess we gotta dial in the vegetation to dial in the water needs.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
For sure. All right, well, this is a different subcommittee, but kind of part of the park is the sign. So in the back of your package, there's a company called Sign Graphics that we've talked to. They gave us a few designs, which they look pretty good, but they looked a lot to us like Metro Park kind of signs. So we asked them when we were at the site, you know, we need more color, we need more this, so they essentially just took what they had and added green. So,
Nobody going the extra mile for us.
no, well, not for free. They're not going the extra mile for
Jeez.
free or a contract to get the work. So some of these I thought looked pretty good. The one that's closest to what we wanted originally was this one.
What
Maybe.
letter is it?
This would be option 2A.
Has a
So
little
we
bit-
kind of wanted the pillar on the right side, so it doesn't show this in the sign, but the Independence Township, it would be metal, it would have backlighting, and something that we had to change is we needed to make sure that the logo had everything incorporated into it from the logo. We agreed that we liked that it says established 1837, but that's kind of one of the more boring ones. I kind of like the one that's at option 3B with the green. I like that, it seems modern. And there's always, same with the park, there's things that we could bring to them and say, hey, we like this, we don't like this, you know, we need to make some tweaks. But this looks semi-modern, it looks easy to maintain, and it looks like something that's it's not over the top where it's, you know, not gonna be tasteful in 10, 20 years.
So
Thoughts, concerns?
two board members talked to me because they saw the packet, and they said that you have to make sure the signs, one, they want to coordinate the signs. because they are thinking that whatever sign should be used here is the one we would use in other locations, not all of them, but wherever there's the real estate to do it,
To the DDA or to the Independence Township?
to the township as a whole. So if there was another, somewhere over on Clarkson Road, for example, if there was room, they would want to have the exact same sign there for that consistency in branding. And if, not like, maybe at the end of Dixie or whatever, where there isn't, there'll be a smaller sign or something that says Independence. They would use those on other places, maybe on Clintonville or wherever. But they do want to make sure that the logo that we spent the money on is going to be there. And they want to just have a little bit more of a coordination with whatever we do at the DDA, that it can be duplicated physically where it can be in the other parts of the township. So just keep that in mind.
So do you think that any of these couldn't be used somewhere else?
No, I don't,
Is that why it was brought to your attention, I think is what Sam's trying to get
yeah,
at.
I'm saying that, I think it could be, but I'm saying let's not just design it for the park only. It's gotta be really the sign that we could potentially use other
Standard for
areas in
whole
the
town.
township.
Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine what we would put up there that we couldn't put in a smaller scale somewhere else, but
So,
Yeah.
my
sorry,
opinion,
yeah.
my first thing I said when I walked up to the meeting was I don't like the metal background, and, she said, well, everybody's signs are metal. I don't care what anybody's anything is. This could be easily just dented all to hell, and then the sign's destroyed. So, a metal sign on the side, in front of a office building is one thing, which is, which is smaller, but, this is in a parks type setting, like most signs in parks are made of stone and wood. They're not made of metal that you can hit with anything and just put dents all through this whole thing, So we had originally talked about having the letters proud of the sign and backlit. I don't care what we do, but I am totally opposed to using aluminum on a commercial sign like this. It will be tearing that thing is gonna look like hell for the whole time it's gonna be up there. As soon as it gets dented by anything, a lawnmower, rock, anything, if you deal with aluminum a lot, which I do, when when you have the glare of it, when you start having imperfections and dings, it defaces the sign, you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
that's a very fragile, if this was, I
That's-
like the wood thing, and
that's
if it was
vinyl.
like, well,
It's vinyl on here.
it should, well,
But the-
it should
the-
be like of a composite material, you know what I'm saying? They might be saying it's vinyl, but we wouldn't want it to be vinyl, because vinyl cracks and breaks when it freezes, but,
Like a Trex decking type
yeah,
material.
something like that, that's a
Okay.
composite, so we wouldn't want technically vinyl, And most signs, I'm sure, aren't designed to be in a situation that could go wrong, or bad could happen to them because they're elevated or for whatever reason, but those are my biggest concerns with it. The design of it, to me, is pretty bland,
Yeah.
I like the idea with the small tower, because we could use that idea in a smaller scale in different places, and it's kind of got a little thing going for it, but I'll defer to you. But from the builder's perspective, the building materials on this, I would not be in favor of.
So, I think Chuck's point is valid, and what I would like to ask is, Chuck, that's something we talked about early on, is that whatever we did here, we want it scalable elsewhere. So, would you have any recommendations on who we would partner with to be able to agree on a design?
I mean, we can ask the board, just two people, just get their opinion.
Yeah, we don't need to include them and get their input, but we don't need a subcommittee.
Okay, oh, we have one.
We have our own committee right here, it's called the DDA, so.
But you can't do the sign without the permission of the board.
Right. So we can run it by
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
but,
So I'd rather bring them in sooner to get their opinions, rather than waiting, because we've kind of been circling this for a while.
I think if you just make sure that you keep this logo,
Mhm.
because that's what they
they
spend all
love
the
the
money
logo.
on.
They love the logo.
Yeah, and I get it.
And, we just make sure that it's something you could pick up and drop down on Clarkson Road, or maybe, no, I don't know, maybe Clintonville Road or whatever.
Yeah, any of them. It's,
I think they'll be fine with it.
yeah, I don't disagree with that, because anybody else coming into the township passing this park is not gonna know that that sign was designed for that park. They're gonna think this is our sign.
Yeah.
We discussed this when we were developing the signs, that the pillar itself would be able to fit on smaller areas, keep the logo that was deemed from the township, the new logo, and then we could always just add, Independence Township across the bottom or whatever, and keep it small.
Right.
Which is why we preferred the one with the pillar,
Yeah, 'cause
because
that-
then we could eliminate this on
Right.
smaller areas in case we wanted to use it at other ends of the DDA we were talking about.
It would
but
just
we
be,
would have to-
it would just be the pillar at the entranceway without the
Yeah.
flat
So
spot.
this
You know what
particular
I'm
type-
saying, as a marquee.
However, to Sam's point of the background
saying,
of the
Yeah,
large
John.
sign, I don't know what else you would use.
Besides
Wood-
metal,
Yeah, wood would also look
rock.
also awful.
They-
So
I mean, they've
what
done-
other substance would we use?
Yeah, and I don't know, we asked them when we were there because they do a number of municipalities, they've done Lake Orion, I think they did Bloomfield, they've done a ton of them. And they said, they all use metal.
Well, we don't want to use
And
metal.
it gets your idea of like, if it's street sweepers or something's gonna kick up rocks, but this is gonna be 15, 20 feet off the road. The one that's in Lake Orion is 10 feet off the road in the median.
But Sam, what else would you
I would,
suggest?
it could be a piece of limestone with black letters on it.
Well, the problem with limestone is the discoloring, and so then you gotta keep up on the discoloring then.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
we're
just
saying if you don't like
no,
the metal,
no,
what's
no,
the alternative?
Well, there's other, there's gotta be any, there's
Fertilizer.
gotta be a million
Sometimes they
alternatives. What
do
about
stain
doing it
from
out of composite?
fertilizer into
And then putting the letters on
stone.
that?
Yeah,
Which is gonna.
Like actually having this
I've
be
seen
the
a lot of
composite?
buildings.
I'm just,
yeah.
you can argue all you want, but once it's dented, the sign's ruined. So whatever you're saying is irrelevant to me, because it's gonna get dented. I'm just telling you it is.
But we
There's
do
other
have to have an
products that we can use. It can be, it can still be green, it can be anything. It's just, aluminum is just not a good product,
Okay, but
so.
I'm not familiar enough with the construction products out there
They
to
build,
have
what
alternatives.
they do is they just build a metal box and then they put all the lighting and wiring inside it typically. That's how you illuminate a box. So what they're giving us is what's easy for them to do, that they do every day, that's just easy peasy. That's not what we're looking for. We're
That's not my
looking for-
question, though. My
right.
question is I'm not familiar with other
Right.
materials that could be used in
Well, it
replacement.
could be made out of,
So-
it could be done out of a piece of black granite. It could be done out of there's a lot of stones. It could be a natural stone that
But
we
then-
put the letters on.
Wouldn't you have to give up the backlighting then?
Well, this
And the
backlight,
cost would
this
go
back,
up.
well,
But if you
yeah, I'm
didn't
not
have the
worried about the
backlighting,
cost,
it
but
might shift.
the back, well, I hope that this isn't proposed to be a sign that these letters light up on. This isn't designed, this is like this to me looks like you're gonna just have fluorescent lights or LED inside and it's gonna light up these letters. This is not designed that it has profiling out, plasma cut metal letters with hidden lighting in between any of that. That's not what they were going for. If we go with a solid surface projection ladder, I don't know if you've ever been by Sashabaw Creek on Mabee Road, the subdivision on the left there, it's got big metal cutout letters that project off the stone, then we probably would want to light this from the ground, up to
Shine
it,
it up.
or some way, or have, some other means of, instead of internal lighting,
Well, then you need electrical on site to do.
Yeah, this is getting wired no matter what, was I think the plan.
Yeah.
But depending on what you would use on your background would depend on how the rest of it would come along though, so. I mean, I have no objection to the granite idea or to whatever, but my thought was that you would backlight those letters and that's how it would shine. And we wouldn't have to have that bar across the top that's always going out, or the light, coming up from the bottom looks a little bit, old school, but,
Yeah, this, I mean,
Well, same questions we had with the park. Anything that I should bring to this company and say, hey, we like this, we don't like this, so that they can tweak to get us closer to what we do want.
This is a cheap design. I think we gotta do something that's more industrial and will last forever, you know? It can be done out of a piece of steel. I mean, if you got somebody creative on this, you could come up with lots of things. I'm sure that somebody researching signs, you did, can come up with a lot better than a big square piece of aluminum, green aluminum sitting on top of it with letters on it, you know? I mean, I don't see that to be all that,
But
Okay, moving past
I
the
do think that the
material.
basic design
I
of
like this part.
this is what we were
Yes.
looking at, and Chuck might be able to take the basic design to the concerned people and say, hey, is this what you're thinking? And if that's a go, okay, we're at step one. Now, look at the sign part itself and say, okay, what other alternatives do we have for that, and swap that out.
right.
And then, boom, we're done with that, and we can sign, because this has been, yeah.
I agree. If
We'll
we
never
can
get
get to the
past the
tower
next step.
concept, Chuck, do you like that? Where that little piece would then be like a staple as you
Just
come
this
in the
part.
township, you just would put the tower with the logo on it? Because we're not gonna get a lineal sign as you come on.
Or do you need the verbiage to the Independence Township?
Well,
Because
even
you could
then,
always
you could
add
put it on the
that,
bottom.
and then like our logo, it's
Yeah. I
I
curved.
think you
on
could
it.
Right.
circle it
Right.
around so that
Yeah.
you still had the logo, because I think, or not the logo, have the wording, because just having the bell to people coming into the community means absolutely nothing.
But so you would raise the bell a bit because you would need the width on the bottom because it angles up to get independence
It's
on
like if
there.
you take the logo in the right-hand corner, if you were to take that and put it over here, like if you were just
Yeah.
on the thing, that's how those would be. So you're taking the Independence Township to just this on the tower, instead of just having the bell that says established 1837.
So this, Chuck, this is the logo, right? The one
Yeah.
out here?
Yeah.
Because that's what we originally discussed, putting on this,
I see.
that could be universal around town.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
it took 20 years to get to this point.
I-
14 years ago, we had funding for this sign and it never got put in. This has been going on forever. The likelihood that we're gonna go buy property around the township to put signs up at all the entranceways, because the road, they're not gonna let us put this stone column in a road right away. I can't imagine, you know, so that's why everyone's got these
Right away.
cheesy little things for coming signs on a pole,
But
because.
we might be the proud owners of a little piece of property over there by the old Tesla dealership, so there could be some space there to put something on.
All right, well, that would take this side,
I'm going back-
hopefully we would put something this big on it, you know what I'm
Well,
saying?
going back to the budget issue of getting some numbers and getting some projects completed, here's our flags and here's our sign,
I think
and
all they
moving
care
forward.
about, I
Is
think all
the
they care
logo.
about is the logo
Yes.
itself.
Yeah.
I mean, so, as long as they come back and say, hey, they're gonna use this logo, and they'll put the word independence, I think that's all they care about.
Can we agree to direct Dave that we're in agreement that we like the tower with the base? Because if we can agree to that, we can have the engineer and the landscape architects place that, get the footing size done, you know, figure everything out. Then what's above the stone and the details and the timbers, may they be, can come later. But the concept of, this is about, you know, 10, 12 feet long, 15 feet long, and, you know, 6 feet tall, and it's gonna be 3 feet deep. If we know that, we can keep
Well,
going.
are you
like
saying
she
the
was saying.
tower on the left or the tower on the right? Because
I
there's-
like the tower on the right.
there are
On the right,
different
away
options
from
in
the,
here.
away from the road.
So like you're saying option 2A and 2B? Is that what you're, to the right?
To the right, yes.
I'm
I would
good-
agree.
I'm
Which
good
one
with
do you
that.
like? Do you like
I like 2A and 2B.
with the column on the right?
Yeah, my only thought, if you want it real quick, would be that I like the white logo, but I like the brown text because I feel like the green with the white logo looks like Lake Orion so much.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's all I can think when I look at this. And I just drive that road a lot maybe, so for me, it feels a little more like that, but if we're trying to be different, it would be nice to have brown and a white logo or green or whether you wanna use the pale blue or something, it would just be nice.
How about the pale blue?
Yeah.
I
We could
I
pull
just
this
mean
blue.
something other than the green, cause Orion is
shirt.
green everywhere. And they are the dragons, and so obviously that's theirs, where if we could use the blue, maybe we could bring in the wolves too, since we are
What
the
would be
Clarkston
blue?
Wolves. The
Okay.
logo has blue in
Right,
it.
what would be blue though? What part
I
of
just
it?
mean
backdrop.
this Independence Township part, rather than the green. If you drive down
So this
24,
would be
all
this
you see
color
is
blue.
Orion.
If we were using aluminum, otherwise it's gonna be some other natural
Well,
color.
if you use composite wood or whatever, it's still gonna be.
They can do whatever
They can do
color.
Color you
whatever color
want.
you want.
But if you're doing a granite or something, it's not gonna be a color, so then
No.
you're gonna be out of that whole concept anyway, so, yeah, right. Something,
Remember
I just,
what
as
they
long
made
as it's
in
not
blue.
green is my
Right,
only
that
2
should be-
cents. I just think that it just looks
They beat
very
us to it.
Orion.
doable.
Yep.
Good point.
I think the brown gives you more options of composites and other things. to work-
But
other
we said the brown looks like you're driving into Metro Park. That's why, that's the whole reason they changed the color.
Sorry,
Well,
I wasn't at that
At the
yet.
same time, brown color is not, I don't think so, it's gonna be that attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely
From a
muted
business
between the two.
point, you know, like.
Well, maybe that we don't
It's
do
not
color,
vibrant.
maybe we find out what other options there are in natural things or other products to make the backdrop out of, so that we're not, you know, just picking a color off a wheel. I don't know, John, you always smile.
So we can agree to the size, we can agree to the pillar on
To
the
the right.
right.
I just think we should do it up a little bit.
And then,
And then the logo
I think it gives
on the
you
pillar.
have the
Which
yellow
have-
color and you have the blue color to work with what you need to use for the Independence Township. I mean, I wouldn't go with the yellow probably, just because I don't think it really stands out, but you have the blue color that's already in our logo.
Yellow and blue, Clarkston.
There you go.
I think,
The
yeah.
wolves.
So
Right.
blue is
To
something
come.
soothing and tranquil.
Perfect. That's what we need.
My favorite color, so.
Well,
Let's go
if
blue.
you, with, if you, you know,
Look
when
at
you
the
come here, you're
materials.
gonna experience everything, that's for sure.
I think
Right.
we're
Just hot
regulated by the
pink.
materials. Yeah.
Okay.
It's our slogan.
Are we good? Okay, so J is public comment. There is somebody in the meeting. Who's John? Is that, are they with us?
No, he's
Hi,
the
Chief.
guy.
Okay,
putting it
hi,
on.
John. So, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. We all have our homework.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, awesome.
Thank you.
Great meeting. Thank you all.